Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting. Good afternoon, sorry. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. We've got one matter on the agenda today. Could I ask you to elect a chair, please?
Welcome everybody here today. We'll just have a quick introductions around the table so everyone knows who everyone is. We'll start with you, Alex, first.
Hello, my name is Councillor Alex Kinsley.
My name is Louis Stephen. I'm also a councillor.
I'm Councillor Jenny Barnes.
My name's Charlotte Pigeon. I'm the legal advisor to the committee.
Thanks. I'm Julian Pugh from Democratic Services at Worcester City Council.
I'm Stephen Inman, Clerk to Laslett Charities.
I'm Adam Scott. I'm representing the local area as the local councillor, and I'm been assisting the residents with their complaints.
Hello, I'm Nikki Jones. I'm the Licensing Officer for Worcestershire Regulatory Services, and I'm going to be presenting the report today. Thank you.
I'm Murphy Carr. I'm the General Manager of the Conservatory.
Hi, I'm Jack Tompkins. I'm the owner of the bar and the building.
Start with pressing the button. Presentations to the subcommittee are not given under oath. However, I should like to remind all parties that the highest standards are expected, and any deviation from these high standards could possibly influence any decision of the subcommittee. I'm just going to remind you as well that it is permitted to have legal representation. I don't see anybody here with you today, but I just want you to be aware that you could do that if you choose to do so. But, thank you. Right, so the first item on the agenda is for our licensing officer to present the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody. Right, we're here today for an application to vary a premises licence for the Conservatory Cafe Bar in Worcester. Bit of background for everyone. On the 3rd of November 2025, an application was received from Mr. Jack Tompkins for the variation of the premises licence for the Conservatory. I can confirm the application contained all the required documentation, including the fee, and it has been advertised in accordance with the requirements of the Licensing Act 2003. A copy of the application is attached at Appendix 1. Members should be aware that the premises currently holds a premises licence issued by the Council, a copy of which is attached at Appendix 2. The current licence authorises the following licensable activities. So you've got sale of alcohol every day from 10 in the morning till midnight, that's on and off the premises, and you've got late night refreshment every day from 11 o'clock in the evening till midnight. Okay, and that's indoors. Some non-standard times on there which cover New Year's Eve. The applicant is applying to include recorded music and live music at the premises and extend the hours on a Friday and Saturday by 1 hour. The non-standard timings also include Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So what they're looking for is recorded music, Sunday to Thursday, 10 till midnight, on Friday and Saturday, 10 till 1 in the morning, performance of live music on a Friday from 5 till 10:30 in the evening, late night refreshment Friday and Saturday from 11 till 1 in the morning, and sale of alcohol on a Friday and a Saturday from 10 till 1 in the morning, that's on and off the premises. It should be noted that the Live Music Act 2012, which took effect from the 1st of October 2012, disapplies live and recorded music related conditions on licensed premises where live or recorded music is taking place between the hours of 8 AM and 11 PM. So during the consultation period, there were no objections received from any of the responsible authorities. However, the police have agreed with the applicant to additional conditions to go on the licence. These conditions have been attached to the report at Appendix 3. During the public consultation, we had 9 qualifying objections received from members of the public. Their objections are citing that varying the premises licence will undermine the licensing objective for the prevention of public nuisance. A copy of these representations are attached at Appendix 4. Just another relevant matter, a review of the licence history shows that following the complaint activity in relation to the premises, there were two noise complaints, one on the 30th of December 25 and one on the 1st of January 26, which came in to Worcestershire Regulatory Services. A noise letter, I understand, was sent by Environmental Health to the licence holder, and the licence holder contacted WRS, advising that, and it was to do with loud music, DJs and bands. The licence holder contacted WRS, advising that they do not have DJs or bands. The only entertainment is on a Friday night between 8 and 10:30 with solo artists. The doors are closed and only opened when customers come and go. No further complaints or previous complaints have been reported. Those are the only ones. So local policy considerations. The subcommittee should have regard to the council statement of licensing policy under the Licensing Act 2003. Hopefully you should be aware of that. Legal implications. I'm not going to go through the legal side. I will leave that to Charlotte because she's much more qualified than me on that. So today, for decision, the subcommittee must consider and determine the application. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple of clarification points myself, and then I'm going to ask other people if they'd like to ask questions of you before we start. I'm sorry, this is perhaps a very basic question, but sale of alcohol on and off premises, what does that actually mean? Does that mean people can go in there, buy something, and then go outside and then drink it outside, or are they walking away with it, or what? What does that actually mean?
Yes, that's right. So they can buy the alcohol and they can either drink it on the premises or they can take it away.
Fine. Yeah. And my second
Same as
question.
an off licence, really.
Okay. And what does late night refreshment mean in terms of the licensing? So you've got sale of alcohol, late night refreshment. What is that? Is that food, or what is that exactly?
Yeah, so late night refreshment is any hot food or hot drinks. So up until 11 o'clock, you don't need a licence to sell hot food and hot drinks. But after 11 o'clock, you do, which is the late night refreshment activity.
Great. Thank you.
Just one thing, if I may, just to clarify, I'm not sure whether you can or not, but under section 4.1 in our pack, page 3, you talked about you mentioned earlier about the complaints that have been received. And I'm a bit confused as to sort of where that noise originated from. Have you got anything further you can add to that helps us understand that?
I don't have any further information. I'm afraid that the noise complaints are reported to Environmental Health, and they deal with any of the noise complaints. They haven't made any comments to me or given me any further information on it. The complaint came in, they've contacted the licence holder with a letter that always goes out, and then obviously the licence holder has replied with their comments. So, okay.
Thank you. Jenny, do you have any questions at this stage?
Nothing at this point.
No. I'm going to ask the applicants, do you have anything that you'd like to ask to clarify anything that you've heard so far? No, everything's correct so far, yeah. And legal, have any questions or queries at this point?
No questions from me, thank you, Chair.
No. And the representatives, Scott and Stephen, do you have any questions at this stage to clarify?
No questions, no.
No, fine. Okay. So the next part of the agenda is for you as the applicants to make your case. You're going to have 10 minutes between you. You can split it up any way you like. When you finish your presentation, then we will ask some questions. That's your chance to get more information across. We want to genuinely find out all the pros and cons and understand your business as well as we can do. So, yeah, so over to you. You've got 10 minutes.
Hello, thank you. So I've given you some photos just of our venue, just so you can sort of, there's some context of whilst I'm talking. I'll try and keep it to 10 minutes. So my name is Jack Tompkins, I am the owner, and I'm joined by Murphy, who is my general manager, and we're here to provide you with an insight of why we need an extension to our licence, and to comment on some of the received objections. So a little bit about me. I'm a Worcestershire business owner who, between my companies, employs 29 Worcester residents. We also support the local community with funding every year. We support Christopher Whitehead Language College with their school productions, which some of the councillors in this room may have attended recently. We help young Worcester aspiring boxers, Bailey May, with funding to go around worldwide competitions. So as someone who supports the community, I'm asking the community to support me on this occasion. We came across the conservatory last June when the building had been up for sale for 3 months with no buyers. So as an investor, we decided to buy the building and attempt to save the failing business of the Conservatory Bar and its staff. We took the conservatory over as a going concern. In September, we completed the transaction and have operated the business since then. In the past months, I have personally worked in the venue to assess and change what is needed, what is required to keep the business moving forward. One of the main things we needed to do was refresh the venue as it was falling apart and hadn't been refurbished in 15 years. So we did, in January just gone, we invested £200,000 into the building. We completely renovated the inside and out. As I said, please see the photos you've got in front of you. I'm very proud that this is a place to relax and enjoy a peaceful evening with some wine, a cheese board, while spending time with some friends. This has changed our customer base and demographic, attracting more people and an increased daytime trade. But still, this hasn't solved the overall income problem required to keep the business afloat. With the upcoming increases to council tax, rising wages, national insurance and beer costs, I need to find a way as the business owner to increase turnover, which is why I'm attempting to increase my licence for 1 hour on peak trade days, Friday and Saturday. The government is allowed to burden me with increased costs, so I need to be allowed to increase my trading times to try and counteract this increase. I do not want to be one of the predicted pubs and bars to be closing at the rate of 10 per week. We have already recently lost the Cosy Club, a large chain, has had to shut its doors, and we've also seen the Hop Lords on Pump Street close last week. As far as I'm aware, since I took ownership, we have 2 noise complaints. One is from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. We stopped music at 12, so I can see that is unfounded. The second is from New Year's Eve at 4:10. We closed New Year's Eve at 1 a.m. With just leaving the staff to tidy up, and music was turned off. So both of these complaints I do not believe are from our venue. But also none of these complaints are from public nuisance caused by our guests. They are volume-based complaints that we can easily rectify if it was us. We've taken into account these complaints and made changes to help avoid these by investing in a speaker system that is a blanket of sound across the venue, rather than one loudspeaker at the front door, trying to project it at the back. Also, during the refurbishment, we've installed a lot of acoustic insulation and acoustic plasterboard to try and trap the sound inside. Our practice on an evening is to keep the door closed whilst we have a musician on. We also have the manager on shift go out to the opposite side of the street to assess whether you can hear the music every half an hour, and if adjustments are required to be made, we then instruct the musician likewise. Why do we need the increase of hours? Well, research across the city shows that we're actually the earliest closing bar of our type. To name a few, all in residential areas and with residential above, just like us. Tonic is 1 a.m, Bolero's is 2 a.m, the Foregate is 1 a.m, Bottles is 3 a.m, and Bar 22 is a.m. The average shows there is a reason to open this late, but taking this into account and where we are close with our neighbours, we decided to only request to go to 1 a.m. to match the precedent set. Worcester's nighttime trade doesn't unfortunately come into life until around 10 p.m, which currently only gives me as the business owner 2 hours to capture this trade. We need to adapt to the current trend of the nighttime economy. Now to provide a couple of comments to the objections received. The objections I can see are generally not provided on evidence-based issues directly at our venue. They are very much a blanket of general nuisances. I would like to point out that since September when I took over, we have not had one call to the police for assistance or public nuisance. One of the main points provided for the objections is that we will increase public nuisance on the street. Now, I welcome anyone to come and assess a Friday and a Saturday night on Friar Street. A lot of the noise is from passers-by, who are either moving on from the cinema and restaurants down Friar Street and then up to Friar Street to the clubs. Or one of the other main issues is actually outside our venue is the turn onto Union Street, where it's one of the main spots for taxis to drop people off or to be collected, meaning there is a large groups of people waiting in this area, which most of the time have generally nothing to do with my venue. To help this, one suggestion may be to look at pedestrianising Friar Street from a certain time. This would alleviate a lot of the above complaints. One positive is if we did have an extension, we would have security presence for an extra hour, which in fact may deter some of this antisocial behaviour that some of these objections are mentioning. There are a number of objections around broken smashed glass. As our venue security guard mans the door all evening, no customers are allowed out the front with glasses, or anyone that wishes to smoke is requested to go out the back. We've just completely changed the garden space of the venue, making it more attractive in an attempt to stop people trying to go out the front, and you can obviously see in some of the photos I've provided to you. Councillor A. Scott has objected based on issues with our neighbours, Heroes, which I would like to point out is a completely different demographic of customer, and that any issues that Heroes have should not have a negative reflection on my venue. We don't have a client base that leaves shouting. We're a wines/cocktail bar with a price point that deters this kind of behaviour. One objection is that we are a sports bar. This is wrong. We do play sports, but generally games are played with no audio because other customers just want to enjoy a drink. We play audio for national events such as the Six Nations. And again, we attract a certain kind of demographic that doesn't provide us with antisocial behaviour. The sports are also on at a time before the nighttime nuisance and the objections I'm mentioning, so it has no impact with this licence application, as we do not play any late night boxing. Lastly, there are comments around the historic nature of the street. I would like to point out that my building was built in 1541. It's actually 485 years old. As records show, it's always been a commercial use with residential upstairs, and for the last 60 years it's been a bar, but namely it has been the conservatory for the last 44. So where people say it would impact the character of the street, we have been part of that character for a long time. I would personally say one of Worcester's most known local assets in the bar scene. With the above in mind, we are part of the community that is opposing this change, but we by no means want to disturb their peace. We need to find a way to coexist, so I'm happy to fund any kind of acoustic monitoring to make sure that we do not disturb the residents if this helps. Some of these buildings with older windows may benefit from secondary glazing. I'm happy to look at assisting with this if this helps sound transfer into these older buildings. We're also happy to work with neighbours, the police and the council and ask our security guard to keep groups of passers-by and ask them to keep the noise down. I trust that all this information about myself and our venue helps the committee come to the decision to allow us the chance to breathe as a business and increase our trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have questions now. So, what questions have you got?
I've got a few, so
Okay.
I'll do a few and then I'll sort of hand over.
Fine.
Sorry. I was good. to ask about the noise sort of maintenance, if you like. So you talked about the speakers that to project the sound towards the back of the venue. Is that right? So are you trying to sort of minimise how much comes out? I don't know the venue myself, but can you just describe the door opening? Does it go straight into the room as a whole, or have you got a little antechamber before it goes into the main room? Could you just outline?
No, so yeah, the door goes straight out on the street. So one of the issues I think we presumed we were having is we had a PA system, which was still pointing towards the back, but obviously it's quite close to the door. So as part of the renovation, we've got rid of that. So we've added lots of smaller speakers through the ceiling to help project the sound instead of having to sort of have it very loud at the front. So when that door is opened, it's less likely to impact the street. But we've also avoided putting speakers close to the door this time.
Thank you. Can I just ask and it's gone from my head what I was going to ask. Oh, yes. Okay, so you talked about doors and windows being closed, and obviously other than when sort of people are going in and out. Do you have air conditioning in the building? If not, how are you going to manage temperatures in the summer?
Yes, we've got air conditioning. Yeah.
One last thing, if I may, on this noise thing. In your application, you talk about having a sign to alert people leaving the building. Obviously, noise in the building is one thing, but it's the noise when people exit and out of the street is another. Can you describe in a bit more detail how you anticipate that working? How big is the sign? Where is it going to be? How are they going to be made aware of that information? Thank you.
So we've installed it as part of our renovation again. So it is literally above the door, black sign, white writing, that asks them to obviously, please leave quietly and respect the neighbours. Obviously, on top of that, so our security guard is based by the door. We don't request him to walk around the venue generally because we're a smaller venue. So he does. We have the same security every week, and he's instructed to make sure people are leaving as peacefully as possible. But we can't obviously control everybody.
I've got 3 questions. First one, because is it grade 2 listed or grade 1 listed building?
It's not actually listed. It's
Not at all.
conservation based, but Yeah, I do.
Even though it's built in 15, whatever it is?
Yeah, so we recently went for planning for the terrace space out the rear, which was already there, but we wanted to knock down a wall. The local council came back and said the building's gone through that many changes over the years that there's no sort of historical interest, which I mean, if you come inside, you might see there is.
Oops. Right. A second question was based on the picture you've supplied helpfully of the terrace, which you just mentioned. That's an open air space. How are you going to prevent noise escaping from that space into the surrounding area?
Generally, that's at the back. So myself and Heroes have both got rear areas. It's quite far away from Friar Street and any residential. It's overshadowed by the NCP car park, and to be honest, you can hardly hear your friends talking over all the shopping centres, air conditioning systems and ventilation. So that noise transfer, I believe, wouldn't really exist there.
And finally, the security aspect. I'm gratified that you've got one person who is regularly the person for your premises. If it goes into a later night situation, would you be prepared to have two people in towards the end of the evening to make sure that the issues that are raised by the residents are firmly kept in check?
I wouldn't say no. I just wouldn't want it to deter what we're trying to achieve from extra sales, outweighing the cost of a security guard. But it's something that we could look at if it increases our trade.
Thank you.
Murphy, did you want to add anything? You look like you wanted to.
It was just a point on your second question to do with the noise outside, out the back specifically. The roof terrace and the general garden area itself, the speaker system can be controlled on two parts as well, and we generally have the outside area quieter than we do the indoor. So aside from general chatter and whatnot, your levels are lower than the inside is in itself, if that makes sense.
Do you have any more questions, Alex?
Yeah, could I? That's all right. You did mention in your presentation about the nature of the clientele that it sounds like you're sort of hoping to sort of shift it slightly. Did you want to sort of say anything more about that?
Yes, so since I sort of took it on in September, what's nice about the venue is that there wasn't ever a client base. It sort of catered for everybody. But what I will say is, without offending people, is we're not the Wetherspoons of the world. Our price point is £5 upwards of a pint. You know, for a single and a drink, you're looking at £10 to £12. So the customer base we're getting for anything from financial advisors to bankers, police, for all sorts of hosting parties there, which aren't, in my experience, aren't the kind of people that are leaving shouting and screaming. We've got quite a respectable base of customers.
Thank you. I've got a few questions as well, just really clarifications of what you said. We talked about the doors at the front being closed, and of course there's theory and practice, isn't there? So it could be that you could, all will in the world, you could say, oh yeah, they're going to be closed, but in reality maybe they'll be left open, and that could be for a variety of reasons. But can you just comment about how you will ensure the doors are closed? Because obviously if the doors are open, then there's a lot more noise coming out into the street, particularly Laslets and so on. So
yeah, so the door itself is actually, it's on a door closer, so it forces it shut every time somebody leaves. We have got a hook, so in the daytime we do hook it open, just so it's an open door policy like most retail. You know, people are welcome, doors open, come on in. In the evening, that's the security guard's job, is he makes sure that door is shut. So unless, you know, a customer has propped it open, which is very unlikely because they're normally, you know, if it's open, they're moaning it's cold. So they're shutting it for us as well. But yeah, it's closed 90% of the time. The other thing we have found, which is early days, we've obviously just had a month of February, is since we've seen the change in customer base, the refurbishment was to make the venue more comfortable. So last year, it was very much a venue you'd go, have one drink and leave, so that door was opened and closed quite a lot. Now we've actually made it a place for people to stay. The chairs are more comfortable, the environment's nicer. So we've actually got groups coming in at 8 and staying all evening. So, you know, as much as I can't keep the door locked, it is actually opening and closing less because of what we've done with the venue, making people want to be there.
Thank you. And I think you mentioned about smoking that happens at the back and not at the front. How can you be sure that that's the case?
Our security guards say I've had a bit of a sticking point with security guards where I instruct that I have the same one so they know, you know, our client base. 2, so they know our rules. You know, we can't stop people smoking out the front that are smoking and leaving. But if they go out the front and they smoke, they're asked to go away from the venue. But as I say, 90% of the people, again, are deterred because they also, you know, try and come out with their drinks. The security guard goes, no, you can't go out on the street. Please go to the rear. But as I said in my sort of speeches, since we've actually made the outside a place to be, and the visibility of it to customers, they're less likely to even try and go out the front. Before we did the renovation, the back garden was already there, the roof terrace was there, but it wasn't very nice. So you'd probably want to go out for a cigarette on Fry Street instead.
And I think you also mentioned about plastic glasses for anyone at the front. Can you expand on that a bit as well?
That wasn't myself, but we don't allow drinking at the front. Not in the evening. We have got the licence for the front area in the day. I think that's only up till 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. We haven't actually used that towards the end of last year in the cold, and we haven't even used it at the start of this year yet.
Okay, so no drinking at the front of the property. Okay, fine. Yes, over to you, Alex. Yep.
Thank you. You've mentioned coming back to this roof terrace, because I think this is quite important if it's going to encourage people to stay in the premises, which clearly you would want anyway. Can you just talk us through? I mean, looking at the pictures, it does look quite nice. What are the sort of changes that you have made in your refurbishment in that back terrace area, please?
I'll look at the photo. I should know because we did it. So originally, where you can see sorts of the glass, before it was all bricked up. So that's what we sought planning permission for, was one, to cover the area because it was uncovered. Secondly, was to put the glass in, and that was to give customers visibility that there was a space. Because when you walk out our rear doors, originally it just looked like there was quite a small space. So it was very much to give the impact of, okay, we can go upstairs. So in that area, there's heating, there's lighting, there's the TVs, the chairs are nice again, and it's capturing people and it's keeping them out the back rather than finding a reason to go out on the street.
Okay, another question about this upstairs area. So Murphy was saying earlier on about how the noise can be, the volume can be adjusted in different places and so on. So obviously one way to reduce the noise for residents would be to have a reduced or even no music at the top there. What would be your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, ironically, my first qualification was actually a sound engineer. So I spent a lot of time studying speakers and music and frequencies. My main job is also fit outs. We do a lot of gym fit outs. So I was spending my life dealing with acoustic complaints for residential and doing mitigation. I don't think any of our complaints, from my experience, would be from the back, because if you came out to Fry Street and stood there, I don't think you'd hear anybody from out the back. The building's that deep. And as I said, if you look in that photo, you can see all the big louvers from the shopping centre. That constantly is emitting air noise from aircon. So it's very small. The speakers we have in there is a background music like you'd have on a radio in your home. People generally go out to the outside space because they don't want to be in the noise of the inside and they want to talk to their friends. But that's back to my testing point is, I'd quite happily prove it, but in my experience and my qualifications is I wouldn't say that the back is causing any of the nuisance that you've had complaints on.
Jenny, any more questions for you? No. Okay. Are there any questions from legal on anything you've heard?
No, thank you, Chair.
And I'm going to give the opportunity now of the people making representation. Do you have any questions or queries that you'd like to ask directly? Obviously through me, but if you'd like to ask a question, then you may at this point. Would you like to do that?
Thank you for the full explanation, and I think this investment's welcomed. However, could you give a bit more information about your description of the traffic outside this shop and outside the business, and particularly how taxis work at late, around midnight time? You know, just describe Friar Street a bit more. I support the notion of pedestrianisation, but I'm wondering what you would actually mean by that. How does it work at the moment? What do you mean?
Yeah, so fine, don't get me wrong, pedestrianisation to some degree, unless I could have chairs at the front, wouldn't probably help us, because the passing trade is good. You've got obviously Union Street, which I'm sure you're aware of, is right outside our venue. As much as Union Street isn't a taxi rank, it appears to be the place for a lot of people to get dropped off, and I'm sure you can see that we've got a police camera right on our building. Every evening, and I was there this Friday actually, there are hundreds of people that get dropped off there, either by taxis or family and friends. And whilst they're then waiting for their friends again, they are congregating at the back of the Laslet houses by the hedge, waiting around. So that I think is also being potentially tied to us, because it looks like it's our customer base waiting around. Hopefully our customer base is inside. You wouldn't want to wait in the cold once you got dropped off. So I think that's what's not helping us. And obviously the residents is those people either being collected, and late at night again is we see it, and I saw it Friday and Saturday this week, is people are coming back from beer keller bottles all the way down Friar Street and then waiting outside our venue again for the lift. As much as obviously Cathedral Square's got a taxi rank, they don't seem to decide to use it.
If I may, sorry, just in addition to that, I don't know if you're aware of the parking situation on Union Street and around Friar Street in general. It tends to be quite busy. It's very rare that people are able to sort of pull into a space. I personally find that a lot of the time taxis and the like, if they're doing a drop-off or a collection, will tend to just pull in front of the venue, whether it's on the road or they'll sort of pull in just behind a car on Union Street, but again, relatively close to the venue, which I believe will give the impression that it is to do with the venue, but 9 times out of 10, it's not normally linked.
Right. Licensing, would you like to ask anything or clarify any points?
No, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your presentations. We're now going to focus our attention now onto the people who are doing the representations for the local residents. So I'm going to call for Stephen now to put your case. You've got 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't take 10 minutes. I'm clerk to the Laslet's Almshouse charity, which, as you will have noted amongst your agenda papers, has lodged an objection to the variation of this premises licence for the extension of opening hours from the present closing time of midnight to 1 AM on Fridays and Saturdays. And I make this objection under the licensing objective of prevention of public nuisance, just that sole one. This afternoon you will be considering several objections from residents in the neighbourhood, including a couple from residents of the almshouses. As a charity and as owners, and having responsibility for the overall welfare of the residents, who technically are beneficiaries of the charity rather than tenants, we support those concerns. The specific objection from the charity arises first from concerns expressed by the warden, who in turn reflects upon the views of those residents, and secondly, as the charity is the owner of the almshouse complex, in being able to offer for the future a secure and comfortable environment for local residents who have a housing need and are of modest financial means whilst wanting to remain independent. Those are our key criteria for the residents to be housed there. By way of background, the Laslet's Almshouses is a registered charity providing accommodation for some 17 residents, which comprise 16 one-bedroom flats and the former chaplain's house. And it's done so since 1879 on this site, and with the present buildings dating to 1912. It's a coincidence, but Mr. Laslet, of course, was a key member of the Worcester community, and his large portraiture on the wall above us, so he graces us with his presence today. Perhaps one issue of clarification arises from one of the letters of objection. That's an email dated the 10th of February. It's incorrect to refer to Laslets as a residential care home. There's an important distinction to be made between residents who require care and who don't. Laslets does not provide care. The residents are people aged over 60 who are capable of independent living, but even so, in that capacity, their concerns should not in any way be diminished. Again, to help the subcommittee, it may be useful to be aware of the layout of the flats. The 16 flats are situated in 4 blocks of 4 flats on 3 sides of a rectangle facing onto the main gardens with access onto Union Street through the gates. Although, of course, noise travels very easily at midnight, 2 of the blocks do adjoin Friar Street itself, and one in particular is immediately opposite the licensed premises. And within the flats, although they are of a slightly different layout as between each other, a common feature is that the lounge accommodation is at the front of the flat facing the gardens, but the bedroom, the one bedroom, always faces the back of the flats, which in this case again means Friar Street, in particular for those 2 blocks. As stated in my letter, and indeed by some of the objectors, there's a recognition that businesses do in reality exist side by side with residents in a city centre environment, and both may have different priorities, and potential conflicts have to be mitigated and even compromised. And I appreciate the difficulties of making that decision. However, the key facts are that the conservatory bar, along with Heroes next door, constitutes what I feel is a hub of nighttime activity, and hence the potential for public nuisance is increased. Heroes, I note, is referred to as a nightclub, but the conservatory is simply licensed premises, but they operate right next to each other. So it is this concentration. So overall, the charity was concerned that the reference made by the applicant to the need to increase licensing hours to match our neighbours. There may be an argument, though, that if Heroes is the licensed premises, they do have different functions. One is a nightclub and one is a bar, a cafe bar. And so one might question the need for matching. The key worry is that there is a ratchet effect of extending opening hours, a catch-up, in order, as I think we've heard the applicant at least hint today, to stay competitive with those in that same trade. And that's where the interests of the local residents, especially elderly ones, must gain priority. And hence, although we are arguably talking about 1 extra hour on 2 days a week, that's still very significant for those residents. And it's perhaps a threshold. Those opening hours at present should not be increased further. Now, all residents require a good night's sleep, and those who are elderly, arguably more so. And disruption to sleep patterns, as we know, cannot and should not be underestimated, whether getting to sleep in the first place or being woken, having gone to sleep. And as we all know, sound carries, and rightfully it has to be mitigated. And I acknowledge what has been said about mitigation. But the question is, will it be sufficient? I think the residents are very dubious, as is the charity. So I note all of the many conditions attached to the licence. One I see, it's number 10 on the prevention of public nuisance, is one of the terms agreed by the applicant West Mercia Police. Under prevention refers to music being played on premises and doors and windows that will remain closed and on occasions manned. And as several of the objectors have made clear throughout the year, but perhaps particularly on warm summer nights, there's a constant coming and going of customers, and hence doors are constantly being opened and closed, or perhaps, and indeed may not, despite promises, might not always remain closed. So, as we've heard, customers may gather outside, not all of whom are necessarily respectful or even aware that just 4 or 5 metres behind them are elderly residents just wanting to have a quiet night's sleep. So I appreciate the applicant's expertise in acoustics, but equally, I think there is grave suspicion that as evenings progress, voices become more and more raised, volumes of music are increased to compete and not necessarily decreased. As I say, sound travels very well, particularly late at night. So the residents of Laslet, some of whom have been there for many years, several of them are well into their 80s, do accept that some disruption to their sleep is a compromise, and they accept that for the benefit of living in a historic part of the city centre. But, the important but, there are limits, and to extend as requested goes, in our view, beyond that limit. So given the difficulty of strict compliance with what are fairly generalised conditions about opening and closing of doors, etc., and the manning of supervisors being present, the desirability of increasing the hours in this particular location and in a sensitive area is one that I think goes too far. And so I, and on behalf of the charity and the residents, we invite the subcommittee to reject the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I do know that, that corner, and it's a lovely set of buildings there. And we heard previously how it does, that for various reasons, there's a lot of noise and disturbance from various things going on. Do you have any specific evidence that can say that the noise and disturbance that your residents experience is coming from the conservatory, as opposed to, as we've heard earlier on, the taxis, the general location? Is there any evidence that you might have that can sort of help us understand that better from residents' point of view?
I'm afraid we don't keep records as such, and much relies upon the evidence and the views of the residents concerned. I don't think there is any. I don't think the residents are trying to place all of the blame for the noise on these one particular premises, but particularly for those who live right opposite, and in fact 8 of the residents do so, of whom I believe may count amongst their number 2 of your objectors. They can see with their own eyes who is the comings and goings, and who are those who are merely in the street, who are customers from somewhere else in the locality. So no, I can't produce chapter and verse and direct evidence, but I think there is some reasonable evidence to suggest that the Conservatory Bar cannot be totally immune to those kind of problems.
Further questions?
Is that that's right. So you've described the layout for us, and that's helpful to understand that the bedrooms are on the back. And I mean, they're all buildings. I'm assuming this isn't the case, but is there air conditioning in the buildings, or do they have to have the windows open in the summer too?
Yes, thank you. Due to planning restrictions, I think having air conditioning in the windows would be impossible. No, they rely on windows being left open. Some, and this is just an opinion, I don't have hard evidence, some I suspect do like to sleep with the window open. Many older people do, and some may not. But yes, there's no air conditioning.
Jenny?
Thank you for raising the issues. If it was just alcohol sales going into a later time frame and not the music, would that be acceptable to your residents, or is the overall package completely unacceptable overall?
I think the starting point must be that it's difficult to distinguish whether or not it is pure. If there was the music but no alcohol, would there be a problem? And if there was alcohol but no music, would there be a problem? I don't know the answer to that, but I think one must feed off the other. So I think there is potentially, it would be nice to say, oh, well, yes, if we rule one out but not the other. But I think that for the residents, I think that would be a difficult decision to make. I think they would have to think very carefully about that, and I can't come down on one side or the other. I'm sorry.
Just going back to the windows and air conditioning and not having air conditioning. So obviously in the middle of summer, we can expect them to, and it should be obviously a natural right, I'm thinking. You should be able to have a window open and be able to get a good night's sleep. So what is the potential for perhaps having double glazing and air conditioning in these properties? Is that a feasible thing that could be introduced in the future?
Thank you. I wish our property agent were here to give you chapter and verse on this. To my knowledge, the question does arise about the need for improvements to the buildings as a whole, and I'm fairly confident that given although the building is not listed, it is in a conservation area, and I know certainly that negotiations with planning officers about changing windows, including double glazing of any kind, can be very difficult. The windows are not necessarily standard windows that you would get in any other building in a conservation area. They are, I think from memory, that they're very peculiar. You can't just go to a firm of double glazers and say, install these, please, even with proper wood and not UPVC or whatever. So I think this is this is a problem. And clearly, although I hear what the applicant said about the costs, I think that is a big stumbling block.
I'm going to put a question to you now as a devil's advocate question. I'm not saying I completely agree with this question, what I'm going to put to you, but I'd like to hear your response to it. Some might say that if you live in the city centre, you've got to put up with some noise and disruption because you're living in the city centre. There's going to be nightlife and so on. So, what would you say to that, and how would you defend that point?
Yes, I accept it, and I think that we say there's a recognition that businesses exist side by side, and one of the benefits of living in the city centre is convenience and the rest of it, but and they have lived, and some of the residents have lived in those almshouses for 20 years. And they have lived with the comings and goings. They're familiar with the whole history of nightclubs, not immediately outside, but further up the road as well. And yes, they're very accepting of that. But I think we're coming up against a firm barrier. In the feeling is that yes, there are places in Worcester that open later, but to extend the later opening hours to this part of Worcester, and as I call it, the threat of the ratchet effect, means that it just becomes more and more. And I think their tolerance, and they do have tolerance, is just about not breaking point, but you know what I mean. They've hit a barrier.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to bring you in, Scott, in a moment. We're going to give the other side the opportunity to ask questions now. So would the applicants like to ask any questions for clarification or ask any questions directed to Laszlo's charity?
Not so much questions, but more sort of just comments on some of the issues you've raised, if that's allowed. Sound transfer, once again, you're correct. Which way is the wind blowing? Most of obviously the objections aren't based on music, they're based on public nuisance, which I know can be deferred as music, but nobody's outright saying the Conservatory's music is too loud. Obviously there's a lot of noise generated from up Friar Street, which could potentially travel down Friar Street, which they could be hearing. Air conditioning, I've got your note about obviously the door being open. Last year that probably would have been correct. The AC when I bought the premises was shot and there was nobody wanted to repair it. We've put brand new in just to replace like for like, so we now have a fully functioning aircon system. We don't need to open the door. The point about the windows, I appreciate the buildings are old, so my main company is actually building and fit outs. As we mentioned, obviously you're a charity, by all means we'd look to support with secondary glazing, because that can be added inside the window quite easily to help mitigate some sound. And I'd just like to add that the warden actually comes into the premises some Fridays and Saturday nights and we've got a good communication with herself about the venue. So we've had some things fed back. We've tried to assist if we thought it was us. Murph has actually got a WhatsApp communication with one of the residents directly opposite, so if she feels that we're causing a nuisance, she sends Murphy a WhatsApp and says, have you got your door open? And we're checked. So we've actually already got a proactive line of communication going on. But yeah, there's no other points from us.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone else? No? No, fine. Okay, Adam, if you'd like to make your representations on behalf of residents as a councillor.
Well, thank
To you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Stephen, for your full description. It leaves me very little to say. I'll just make 3 quick points. First of all, the conservatory in this part of Fry Street is barely in the city centre. It's not defined as such in the cumulative impact zone, which makes up part of the statement of licensing policy. This area of Fry Street is out that. Having said that, it needs to be treated on its merits, not part of the cumulative noise levels of the city centre. But secondly, it's not adequate to say, and I'm not saying that Conservatory did, but that because they've got it next door, we should therefore have it too. In terms of impact on residents, it is the cumulative impact which matters. And thirdly, it's the very obvious point that though the conservatory may have been a licensed premise for 4 decades, the housing area here has been here far longer. And before Laslitz was built, it was a Franciscan friary with which were no doubt of residents, and Union Street as a substantial residential area in itself, and there are flats at the back of all of Friar Street, between Friar Street and the City Walls Road. So this is much more a residential part of the central part of town than anything else. It's very much a residential area, so you have to take the needs of those residents into account. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Right. So I think we're now at the end of the discussions from both sides. I'm just going to give a last chance for any other questions or queries.
No, thank you, Chair.
No, fine. Okay. So we're now moving on to the closing statements, and the first one will be from the licensing officer.
Thank you. So yes, just to remind you, we're here for a variation to the conservatory. The variation have put in an application to include recorded music and live music, and to extend their late night refreshment and sale of alcohol from 12 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning. You've had the opportunity to read all the representations in the report. You've had all the facts from the report. You've had the opportunity to hear from the applicant and how they will deal with it. And you've had the opportunity to hear from the representatives. So it's now really down to members to determine the application and decide whether you want to grant it as it is, grant it with conditions, or refuse it as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. And according to the rules, you get the last point now. You can sum up now and make your last representations. Anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you. Just that obviously, as I said, we're new to the conservatory. We're trying to save a Worcester business whilst also owning the building, but we are willing to work with the residents so we can coexist as peacefully as possible, whilst giving me as a business chance to breathe. The only thing I'd like to add is we haven't applied for the licence as a next door's got this, so give us 2. We actually wanted to go later. We just used them as the precedent and gone, well, actually, if they've got 1 o'clock, that seems sensible. Let's just stick to going to 1 o'clock, and we can go from there. So, no, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We're going to adjourn the meeting now. The three of us will deliberate and
Sorry,
make a
Chair, if I
decision.
could just do the legal advice publicly
Yes.
first, please.
Go for it.
Right, so sorry about that. So we have to determine this application with the licensing objectives being our paramount consideration. Just for ease of reference, those are prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. You should only have regard to representations that promote the licensing objectives. You should give no less weight to the written representations against the oral representations that you've heard today. Each application must be considered on its merits and in accordance with our statement of licensing policy. So as you're aware, this is not an accumulative impact area. So that means two things. You should only consider matters that relate to this premise, not to neighbouring premises. And you should only consider, sorry, I've lost where I was. And the starting point would be to grant, unless to do so would undermine one of the licensing objectives. One of the things that I know was touched on, but a sort of a fear of future creeping applications is not something you can consider. You can only consider the application that's in front of you today. You can only consider those matters that are within your jurisdiction, so within the licensing objectives. And you must consider the 182 guidance, the statement of licensing policy, and then determine the step to take, which must be either to grant the application as requested, to modify the conditions of the licence by altering, omitting or adding to them, reject the application in whole or in part, and you should not modify the application or add conditions because it is desirable. It must be appropriate for the promotion of licensing objectives. Thank you.
So I've just got one small query here then. So the applicants seemed to be trying to be helpful with the charity about supporting them in the future to try and reduce the noise, but also about things like the glazing of the windows and so on. Is that something that it's very good to hear all that, but if we were minded to approve this, could that be something that would be conditioned within the final decision?
No, that's not within the licensing objectives, so it would be outside your jurisdiction.
Okay, but other than the fact that other people watching this will have seen them say it. Yeah, fine. Okay, so we will now adjourn. We're going to deliberate privately. You'll go outside. We'll call you back in again, I guess, in about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it takes for us to deliberate properly, make a proper decision. Okay, thank you very much. See you shortly. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for waiting. We've now made our decision. We are willing to allow the licence application, but with a modification. The amended application will only permit recorded music to be played up to midnight, 7 days a week. All the other requests and conditions will be as per the police recommendations. So that's the one change. We've not made any changes to the non-standard timings. You will receive the written decision within 5 working days. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just to confirm, you've got a right of appeal to the Magistrates Court within 21 days of receiving that notice. So that period will kick in once you've had the notice from the licensing authority. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for coming.